Bitch, nigga, gun trigger, dicks bigger, why fuck? Killer, blood spiller, bitch, steal a Mack truck. Bad luck, fucking with this black bug. Bigger Thomas, I promise, leave a corpse in the furnace. Bitch, nigga, gun trigger, dicks bigger, why fuck? Killer, blood spiller, bitch, steal a Mack truck. Bad luck, fucking with this black bug. Bigger Thomas, I promise, leave a corpse in the furnace. Nigga, what?
Saul Williams has been breaking ground for many years across many art forms. He rose to prominence with the film Slam that he wrote and appeared in, which went on to receive critical acclaim at Sundance and Cannes in 1998, gaining global fame for his poetry and writings at the turn of the century. He has performed in over 30 countries and read at over 300 universities with invitations that have included the White House, the Sydney Opera House, Lincoln Center, the Louvre, and has gone on to record with the Nine Inch Nails, Allen Ginsberg. The man has been busy.
Talk about your process and how you come into the world as an artist.
One of the things I loved about being an actor in the theater was the amount of time that we spent before we got on our feet. I loved being on my feet and, performing, but also breaking down the literature around a table. And because of the time that I've spent, dissecting plays and literature and what have you, the written word always held strength and potential on the stage, and I never felt like it had to be bent one way or another in order for it to live on the stage. And so the test for me, especially as someone who's being called a spoken word artist or a slam poet or what have you, was always how well I could edit and clean this stuff on the page. And I knew that if it worked and stood strongly on the page, then it would stand the test of time.
The answer to the question that Wings ask. Is it a quest for celebrity? Validation? A desire to be seen as one who counts? To be among the counted? A limited number of seats given to some, denied to others? The latest American technology taking off where cytology left off. The great mind control. The belief you can become. The belief that you can know. Is it a matter of cultivating envy? Making others wish they could have what you have, live the life you live.
The first time I tried LSD, I was in a friend's apartment in Brooklyn. Suddenly I became aware of the fact that every position I was taking with my body was actually to inform the people in the room that I wasn't gay. And I realized that I had all these things that I had acquired, in terms of ways of sitting and ways of talking that were supposed to project this idea of coolness and masculinity. I realized that gender was performative before I actually realized that race was. My breakthrough was with gender first. And I remember at that moment challenging myself to find some physical neutral, which I was already inspired and encouraged to do because I was in theater school at the time. I had to find this physical neutrality that wasn't necessarily what I was using to project what I was, which was perhaps useful in the streets and some of the environments that I was walking through at times so that I wouldn't be fucked with. And I had learned that really early, growing up in the suburbs, like 60 miles outside of New York City, where everyone kind of overcompensated for the fact that they didn't live in New York City. I realized, oh my God, even the way that I'm holding my wrist as I'm talking to you, I learned that. But I realized that the subtext wasn't only projecting this idea of my masculinity.
And then I went to Morehouse, which was across the street from Spelman. And Morehouse, I was a drama and philosophy major, but Morehouse didn't have a drama department, so all of my drama classes were at Spelman.
Right.
And so then I was forced into this new layer of like Professor Glenda Dickerson forcing all of the men in the department to come on the full and new moon to participate in Menses rituals, where, you know, the women would wear white and the men would just have to come, show up, shut up, and hold white candles while she led the women in all sorts of like prayers and rituals, and we just be there holding white candles. And this is at the same time that Dr. Dre's The Chronic comes out, and women are in Jeeps on Spelman's campuses blasting bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. And one of my playwriting professor, Pearl Clegg, is coming into class like, what the fuck are y'all listening to? How can you nod your head to this shit? Because she had just come out with a book called Mad at Miles,
right,
about how she could not take Miles' muted trumpet without hearing the muted screams of the women that he was vocal about being abusive towards. And so then I'm trying to listen to The Chronic, but everything I'm hearing in class is getting in my way, and also the girls that I'm trying to get at are getting in my way because they're in those same classes as me and being schooled by all this shit and coming home with like Bell Hooks books hanging out their backpacks
Right.
And so I'm from New York and at the party, and they're playing The Bitches Ain't Shit, which I love because they sample the bridge, and that's like the best use of that sample ever. But suddenly I'm not dancing as a form of protest because I'm just away from home and able to now to be like really fluid with my nigga bitch language and all this shit because my parents ain't around, but I can't dive into the bitch side now because I happen to go to school on Spelman's campus and I'm happen to be learning some shit that I'm not so happy to learn because it's burdening my process to enjoy myself. And I'm looking back at all the footage from like the 60s and 70s and saying, not until the black man, not until the black man, and it never sounds right because I'm like, why are these women saying the black man? The black man. And I find myself getting deeper and deeper situated into this question of power and looking at, you know, these cats walking through and around their privilege and hypocrisy on Morehouse's campus while realizing that there's some fucking scholars across the street, and so spending more time there, and yeah, it just fucked my head up. And that was that.
President of Archaeological Indifference, Vice President of Truth, Secretary of Statistics, Minister of Celebrity and Justice, Chief of Staff and Serpent, Blessed Page Turner of the Great Book of Misdeeds and Overestimations, Bishop of the Great Climate Board, Minister of the Deteriorating Sky, Baron of Epic Boredom and Self-Indulgence, all gathered notables, good evening. And you look at the history of the written word itself, there's a book called The Alphabet versus the Goddess, which is about how the evolution of written language itself had everything to do with suppressing the feminine.
And that's the problem with this bullshit that we're facing, because that's the most pressing and real shit. But I mean, you know, like in America, I think of women, and that's globally. Like when I think of the big issues we face, and I think of the patriarchy, I think of, you know, my goal with my work from Slam to my first book, She, to the second book, Said the Shotgun to the Head, to what I'm trying to say, even in coded language with like motherfuckers, and I mean literally those who desecrate the feminine when I say motherfuckers, and men as listening receptacles needs to be increased. Men as listening receptacles need to be increased. I've been talking about how do we smash the patriarchy. I'm saying that if you want to address racism, if you want to address any of this shit, that's what we need to deal with first, because that's the biggest issue and the biggest oppressor and oppressor of humanity. And even when I look at the power of religion and all these fucking institutions, I see them wanting to control sex and women. And that is my question to you and all of us, is how do we connect the dots between what is of importance to us here and also realizing the power that we have. Martin Luther King is the screen name of a hacker in this graphic novel that I've been working on that'll come out next year. And it's really the name of a hacking collective. And they live in a tech hub that's been built on beside an e-waste camp. And the e-waste camp is this, is that you know that we get new computers and phones not when ours are dead all the time, but when new ones come out. And so there's places where scavenger culture is still prevalent, meaning places where they can put piles of shit and people will go through and mine out the wires and the copper and the stuff that's reusable. Many of those places are in the same place where they mine the coltan or tantalum or cobalt, which is a precious stone that we all have in our pockets right now because it distributes power in small circuitry boards. And so every time you're browsing on something and every time your phone is alive and awake, it's because of the coltan and cobalt. You got a little taste of Africa within your phone, right? And you can imagine that the story around those mines is not very different from the story around those diamond mines. It's not very different from the story around those cotton plantations, you know, or those sugar plantations, or those rubber fields, or those, you know, it's the same fucking shit, so that you have all of this modern day digital technology, you know, that is based on analog exploitation. Right now, today, being mined, right now, in the iPhone 7. What? Until we can find a way to hold our governments and corporations accountable, I don't know what to do. So what do? Me, I'm like, well, let's put it in songs. Let's put it in movies and let's, you know, because me, I don't have the patience for the do-gooder shit, really. Like you might hear, you know, like you might hear of the shit that I'm talking about, but I'm actually more interested in the beat. You know, like that's what draws me into a song or a sound. I don't listen to something just because it has a good message.
Right.
It better have some good music behind it.
To see or not
You know?
to shed eyes like two turntables mixed in between my dreams and reality.
We shouldn't get so wrapped in the front lines of our struggle here without realizing that as African Americans, as Americans, we're still coming from one of the most privileged platforms on this planet. So you can get wrapped in your shit here and be like, I'm not free, and da-da-da-da-da. Take one step out of the country with your passport and you'll be like, oh. You'll experience white privilege real quick. Real quick, and you realize that it's not white privilege, that it's American privilege that you're experiencing right now. You can have, and we're already experiencing it right now comparatively. When you look at what cats are really dealing with, I mean, we don't have time to go into some of the stories that I've heard in some of these refugee camps. It's absurd that, you know, it's just, you know, it makes that number of our 2 million people in prison look like, I mean, it's just crazy. I don't know how we connect those dots other than just forcing ourselves and our politicians to answer bigger and broader questions. And it's really just a matter of realizing that when we say Black Lives Matter, it's a global epidemic. And so we should have the wherewithal to understand and study how it's a global epidemic and get beyond our American lack of sense of geography and learn where the fuck a certain place is and what's going on there and there and there.
When I was in exchange student, at one point I had traveled for 6 weeks with 50 other exchange students from around the world. And I was always good in school, and you know, and I came from an activist household, and we were, you know, boycotting shit and trying to end apartheid at that moment and all this shit. And I thought I had a grasp of, like, you know, reality. I knew some Black history shit that I knew, and I didn't learn it in school. I learned it at home and at church, but I learned it. But suddenly, when I'm sitting with 2 Dutch kids who are talking about what's going on in Zimbabwe, or talking to some Belgian kid about the Congo, and aside from the fact that I have to figure out geographically where all these places are, I'm realizing that my so-called great education in America is missing the point by putting our success and progress in the center of what we study. There's a huge intellectual culture in the underground of like Greece and Portugal and those places with like ruptured economies right now, with all the news you hear in Turkey. If you talk to the kids in the streets in Turkey, they have a lot to say, and they know that they better not say it into a microphone, but they'll say it to you. You know, like there's tons of thinking people out there who are looking at the mainstream shit like, yeah, fuck that. Fuck that.
I remember being at a party at Dream Hampton's house in 94 or 95 in Brooklyn. And I remember that she played the Get Money, you know, and I remember the entire party, everybody going crazy because it was Brooklyn and it was Brooklyn's own. And I remember thinking then, we're fucked. The flow might be nice,
Wow.
but the idea behind Get Money at all costs, you know, the idea of, and you see it up till now, like when you look at Formation and it's like best revenge is your paper. And I'm like, oh wow, it's crazy how flawed the message is. You know, I'm not certain that's the best revenge is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, you know, capitalism is not the answer. That there are greater answers to be found.
Understand the rhythm that you seek. Let it be the guiding force you speak from when you speak. Hold your tongue just long enough to blaze your path unique. Then spit the seeds the forest needs to garner what we reap. It ain't deep. Simple as a breakbeat and some rhymes. Type of shit to nod your head while chilling with your dime. But hold it tight cause she just might read deep between the lines. And start to think the words that she now reads are simply mine. Give them voice. Spit them over Pete to Pete rejoice. An anthem you can put in your own words or chant your choice. May heaven smile upon your earthly rainbow girls and boys as it has upon mine. Fancy pins on paper poise is divine. Every page a different sort of kiss. No, not for everyone. This pen is clenching a black fist. And if they ain't your cup of tea, perhaps a glass of piss. So hold your nose and drink it down. Just think of it as crisp. But if it is, if you don't mind the source from whence I speak, and recognize you can't disguise the source of every beat, then nod your head, girl, wind that waist, bend over, touch your feet, and go ahead and pop that thing. Yes, yes, I feel complete.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.